Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever and wherever you're watching or listening. This is the Stochastic NHL DFS Strategy Show, and obviously, I am not Josh Harris. Josh is away today. I am your host, Michael Clifford, host slash analyst slash producer slash very good-looking guy, I'd like to think. Josh is at a doctor's appointment with his son. It was something scheduled. It's nothing, no emergency or anything like that. It's just a normal routine, but he is not able to make it. So it is me today breaking down tonight's 5-game NHL DFS slate. Before we get too much further, just want to say a couple things. One, thank you for coming to hang out with us today and every day. We have a lot of regulars here. Certainly appreciate it. Two, I want to shout out B-Mac. He had a good night last night, a 1K takedown, scoring 190 DK points. He used Seattle 2, had McDavid and Bouchard. As a two-man, had Pedersen and DeBrusk and Hughes from Vancouver with Joey Decord in net. Congrats to B-Mac. Always love to see winners. A takedown with Chandler Stevenson, I think, is about as special as it gets. So congratulations to you. That's a really good night. Interesting slate last night, especially interesting where B-Mac didn't necessarily need the Winnipeg Jets to get there, because the Jets, they went into New York and just kind of laid the wood to the Rangers 6-3. The top line had a big night. Kyle Connor had 2 goals and assists. Mark Scheifele had a pair of goals. Gabriel Velarde had a goal. Neil Pionk had 3 assists. Really good night for Winnipeg, but B-Mac had the takedown without him. Didn't need him. So congrats to him. Evan Bouchard, Connor McDavid had huge nights. So good for him on that takedown. Hopefully we can get some more takedowns here tonight. Before we get a whole lot further, again, just want to thank you all for the support. Josh and I have been doing this affiliate thing for about a year now. And these shows wouldn't be going if it wasn't for all the support, whether it's just dropping in to watch the show, whether it's giving a thumbs up, which I really hope you do, whether it's subscribing to the channels. If you want to support us in another way, you can do so through the affiliate link that Josh always provides. I'll bring it up here shortly. If you go through the affiliate link and use the promo code Stochastic15, you can get 15% off any Stochastic package for a week or a month. So if you do use that affiliate link and you just want to try us out and you don't want to pay full price, you can certainly do that by clicking the affiliate link that I'm dropping in the chat right now. And if you go through that, use the promo code Stochastic15, you get 15% off your first week or month. All right. Felt like I was rambling a little bit there. I'm going to stop rambling. I'm going to get to these games. The first game is the Detroit Red Wings going into Pittsburgh. Detroit has a 3 total. The Pittsburgh Penguins have a 3.5 total. A little bit of news here for Pittsburgh. The Penguins did trade Lars Eller. Was it yesterday? All the days start to blend together. So Lars Eller, not expected to be in the lineup. Right now, it's looking like it might be Blake Lizotte taking the third-line center role for the Penguins, but that's definitely something to watch at warm-ups. Good news is that it is one of the early games, so you're not going to have to worry too much about it as long as you're paying attention to the news. I don't know why you would necessarily be playing Pittsburgh 3 tonight anyway, but as long as you're paying attention to the news, you should be just fine. It is interesting that Pittsburgh has such a big total. They have a 3.4 total. It's, basically other than Vegas, it's the biggest total on the slate. I think for good reason. It's not as if the Detroit Red Wings have been very good defensively so far this season. At 5-on-5, the Red Wings are basically like a fringe top 10 team. Not bad, but on the penalty kill, they've been absolutely atrocious. So far this season on the PK, Detroit bottom 5 by shot attempts against per 60, bottom 5 by actual shots against per 60, bottom 5 by goals against per 60. This penalty kill has really, really struggled. Now, they don't take a ton of penalties, 2.9 times shorthanded per game. League average is about 3.1, so they're a little bit better than that. And it's not as if Pittsburgh power play has been a world beater, but if Pittsburgh's ever going to get a good power play matchup, this is certainly the one. What I'm most interested in is kind of how these matchups break down, because Lars Eller had been taking a lot of the top line matchups with Pittsburgh at home. He's gone. Are they going to give those duties to Blake Lizotte? Are they going to give them to Noel Acciari, or are they just going to give it back to Sidney Crosby? We really don't know. I'm not super concerned about it with Detroit because I don't think any of the Detroit lines are that great defensively. But honestly, the Detroit top line is the one that likes to trade chances, kind of like the Pittsburgh top line. Pittsburgh is coming in with a lot of ownership, and I think justifiably so. They're coming in 17% ownership for the Crosby, Raquel, O'Connor line, 14.4% ownership for the Malkin line. The top two stacks are both right in range, so I don't think there's anything too egregious here. I do like Pittsburgh here in a nutshell, especially coming off that beatdown that they suffered at the hands of the Stars. It's one of those things, it's like, you certainly should expect this team to rebound and put in a little bit of a better effort. Now, is it a better effort as in they lose 5-3, or is it a better effort as in they win 4-1? I guess we'll find out in about 8 hours time. But I do like that Crosby, Raquel, O'Connor line here. Like, they have been, Crosby and O'Connor have been generating a lot this season. Again, they trade chances back and forth, so they're very bad defensively, but they're at 3.9 expected goals per 60 so far this season. They're only shooting 2.7% as a line. That should even on the lower end of the scale, that should probably be closer to 9%. So, this line's probably a 3 goals per 60 type of line. Raquel has been shooting well. Again, Detroit's penalty kill has really struggled, and you get Crosby and Raquel both on the top power play unit. So I do like that Pittsburgh top line. If you want to drop down to Pittsburgh 2, I think that's fine. The thing is like, there's not a huge price difference between them. You're only saving $1,000 and you're cutting off quite a bit on your top 2 stack percentage. So I would probably just go to Pittsburgh 1. Now, if you want to take O'Connor out and put in Malkin, put in Russ, something like that, and try to take advantage of a bad Detroit penalty kill, I think you can do that. Like I said, Detroit doesn't take a ton of penalties. They're at 2.9 times shorthanded per game so far this season, but they've given up 14 power play goals against in 14 games. That's how bad the actual PK has been when they've had to be on the ice. So good power play matchups are going to be few and far between for the Penguins. I think this is one of them, especially with Eller gone. I think this is a situation where I'd focus most on the power play guys. At even strength, I would prefer the Crosby, Raquel, O'Connor line. But honestly, if I was using Pittsburgh tonight, Crosby, Raquel, Rust, Malkin, whether you use all 4, some combination of 3 out of 4, something like that, I think that's where I would put my focus on Pittsburgh. The Detroit side is also interesting. That Larkin, DeBrincat, Raymond line was really, really good last season. They're about 4 goals per 60 minutes. They're less than half that so far this season. A lot of it is driven by shooting percentage. Part of it is that they're also not creating very much on the ice. But, we just saw with Dallas, like Dallas was a team struggling to score this season, and they go into Pittsburgh and put up 7 goals. Now, I suspect we get a better effort from the Penguins here. It is going to be Alex Nedeljkovic in net, not Joel Blomqvist, but it's not as if Nedeljkovic did a whole lot better when he spelled off Blomqvist on Monday night. But that Detroit top line is perfectly correlated on the power play. Here's the thing. Detroit's power play has been very good this season by their goal scoring. Like, that's one thing that you absolutely cannot take away from this team. They've had 10 power play goals in 14 games. That's pretty good. Here's the thing is that Pittsburgh's penalty kill is not that bad. It's not great, but it's not awful. And Detroit's power play shooting 33%. At the absolute high end for a power play, you will see a power play. Like, I'm talking like Edmonton last year type of stuff. You'll see him at around 18%. So 33% is just absolutely crazy. Like, we've seen that with Ottawa. Ottawa started really hot on the power play, hasn't really done as much over the last week or so. I think Detroit's top line is just fine. They are perfectly correlated. It is a good matchup against Pittsburgh. I don't have any matchup concerns at 5-on-5. There's a little bit of a matchup concern on the power play because I don't think Pittsburgh's penalty kill is that bad. But if I had to pick between the two sides, like I'm going to go to Pittsburgh here, and I think I would prefer a Pittsburgh power play stack, some sort of broken stack again, like Crosby, Raquel, Rust, Crosby, Malkin, Raquel, Crosby, Malkin, Rust, like something like that, as opposed to playing Detroit here. It's the prices aren't that far off, and I think Pittsburgh's in a much better power play spot than Detroit. And honestly, I think Detroit's penalty or power play regression is going to kick in, and it's going to kick them in the teeth. And this is not a team that has been generating well at 5-on-5. So Pittsburgh side, I prefer. If I were to get super cheap here, like I don't think there's a need to really get super cheap on this slate. There's basically one expensive spot, and it's Colorado. So, if you're not playing Colorado, you don't need to save a ton of money. If you do want to get super cheap, Tarasenko, Kasper on the third line for Detroit, they haven't been that bad offensively. 2.3 expected goals for per 60 together this season. 2.4 against. Like, if you can be a break-even line going against the depth from Pittsburgh, I think you can do well. In a case where you are playing Colorado, I think Detroit 3 would be one of those depth lines that you can consider tonight. But other than that, I'm not running out to play Detroit depth for any reason. So Pittsburgh top line / Pittsburgh power play for me in this game is where my interest is. We'll get to defensemen at the end of the show. But I do think Moritz Seider certainly makes a good defensive play for DraftKings here tonight. But we'll get to the defensemen at the end of the show. All right, let's move it along. Let's get to Toronto and Washington. Toronto is going into Washington. Obviously, Toronto played last night. They have a 2.8 total. Washington has a 3.2 total. This is interesting. I was kind of expecting. Brett's saying DFO is Crosby, Rust, and Drew. What I will say about Pittsburgh's lines is that those are kind of projected lines. They don't know what the lineup is going to be because Pittsburgh did change up their lines a couple times last game when they were getting their brains beat in. Again, it's just one of those things to watch at warm-ups. I'm just going by what they had for most of last game. So just something to keep in mind. Toronto's going into Washington. Toronto's coming off a loss. They lost 3-0 last night to Ottawa. I'm going to be honest. Austin Matthews not expected to play tonight. He hasn't been skating again, but just one of those things that you might want to keep an eye on for warm-up. It is a 7:30 Eastern start, so it starts at right at slate lock. So, what am I doing here? So it starts right at slate lock, so you'll know whether Matthews is playing. I'm not expecting him to. I was interested to see that Washington only had a 3.2 total. You could make an argument that basically, like other than like Carolina, that Washington has been the best. Carolina, maybe Winnipeg, obviously, but for a combination of both creating scoring chances and finishing, like other than Carolina, it's probably Washington. Like obviously the Jets are up there. They've been scoring a ton, but they haven't been creating a lot of quality scoring chances. I think they've been a little bit on the luckier side. Washington has genuinely been creating a lot of really good scoring chances. If you look at their shot map, they're basically just living below the hash marks in front of the net. And if you do that, you're going to end up scoring a lot of goals. And the thing with Washington is that it's not just the top line or the second line. It's both lines. Both of the entire Washington top six is just living from the front of the net. Now, obviously, Ovechkin shoots off a little bit more to the side, but Connor McMichael, Tom Wilson, even Dylan Strome a little bit are getting to the net pretty well. Toronto's on a road back-to-back here. They're going to have Joseph Woll starting because Anthony Stolarz started last night. Woll has not been that bad since he returned from injury. Stolarz has been the better goalie. Just looking at this season, but Woll has not been, he's been about league average since he came back, and league average is not that bad. But the thing is again, Washington's creating basically at will against everybody. Like this is not a team that, is just kind of beating up on the weaker teams. Like, they've certainly put up goals against like teams like Montreal and Columbus, but 5 goals against the Rangers, 6 goals against the Devils, 4 goals against Vegas, 3 goals against the Devils again. Like, they've been scoring against some of the top teams in the league pretty well. And when I look at the top stacks tool, it doesn't look like a lot of people are playing Washington. Like 3% for the Ovechkin, Strome, Protas line, under 3% for the Dubois, McMichael, Tom Wilson line. I get they're a little bit expensive, but that top line for the Washington is only 18,100. It's not like you're paying 21K or something like that. That Washington top line, when you look at other lines on the slate, cheaper than Carolina, a little bit more expensive than the old Toronto too, like a little bit more expensive than Vegas, a little bit more expensive than Detroit, but it's nothing extreme. Like, I know, Toronto's not a bad defensive team at all, but considering that nobody wants to play Washington here tonight, I think there should be some interest in the Caps. I mean, not that Washington's power play has been great. What I will say is that it has been a lot better since they took off Pierre-Luc Dubois and added Connor McMichael. That Washington power play with McMichael there is at about 73 shots per 60 minutes with the power play. The best team in the league right now in Nashville as an entire team's at about 65.5. So like this Washington power play has looked different since they added McMichael. I mean, McMichael has just been tremendous this season. He's a guy that plays fast off the rush, knows how to get to the net, those types of things. And, that works well, especially on a power play that could be a bit slow at times when you're looking at, guys like John Carlson, Alex Ovechkin or whatever. So the Washington power play has been a lot better. And Toronto has been one of the most penalized teams in the league so far this season. They're at 3.8 times shorthanded so far this season per game. That is the third most in the league behind only Boston and Carolina. Washington is above average by drawing power plays, so they're probably going to get 3, if not 4 chances on the power play here tonight. They don't use Ovechkin very often against opposing top lines. And last night, Toronto moved John Tavares together with Mitch Marner. Now, that would tell me that Ovechkin, if Toronto goes back to that Tavares-Marner duo, that Ovechkin's not going to see much of that line, and that would probably be Toronto's best defensive line. And that would mean Ovechkin going out against like a William Nylander, Max Domi line or something like that. Like, I really like Washington 1 here. Again, nobody is playing them here tonight. 18,100, 8.1% top 2 stack, 3% ownership. They're trying to get Ovechkin his goals. He's going to be on with the empty net, whether they're down a goal or up a goal or whatever. If you do want to go down to Washington too, I think that's perfectly fine. Wilson, McMichael, and Dubois have been tremendous. 3.8 expected goals so far this season, 5.1 actual goals. Again, Wilson and McMichael do a great job of getting to the net, and I think that actually opens up some lanes for Pierre-Luc Dubois and his playmaking. I do think it's just a very, very good line. Considering how good Washington has been, I think they're being a little bit disrespected by those ownership projections here. So I will lean to Washington 1. I think either of the Washington top 2 lines are just fine. And I do want to mention that Lars Eller is not going to be playing tonight unless something crazy changes. Lars Eller is not going to be playing tonight. So we'll see what that bottom 6 looks like at warm-up. They did have Michael Scarbosa as the third line center in their last game. Whether he's back there again, we'll find out at warm-up. But Ovechkin, Strome, Protas for me. If you want to take off Protas and put in McMichael or Wilson or something, make it a power play stack, I think that's perfectly fine because, again, Toronto just takes a ton of penalties. On the Leafs side, a lot will depend on what those lines look like at warm-up. Because, again, they put Tavares and Marner together last night, and then they put Nylander and Domi together. I don't think this will surprise anybody, but I was looking at the defensive numbers for Nylander and Domi. Basically, every site that I looked at in their minutes together last year, they're at like 3.1, 3.2 expected goals against per 60. It's about 20% worse than league average. They're just not good defensively. And I worry that if they do have a Domi Nylander line together and Washington plays as well as they have been playing basically all season, that they're just going to get broken up again and that they're going to go back to different line combinations. So we really have to see what the lines look like in warm-up. Right now, we're still showing the old lines that they started with last night, Marner, Nyes, and Domi, 7.2% ownership. Nylander, Tavares, McMahon, 14.6% ownership. See, this is what I'm talking about with the ownership is like Nylander, Tavares, and McMahon, 17,500, 14.6% projected ownership. The team has a 2.8 total. Washington's top line is only a few $100s more expensive, and they're coming in at a fraction of the ownership, and they have the higher total. Like that's what I don't quite get here. That's why I much prefer the Washington side. Like, if you want to go to the Toronto side, I think you can, because a lot of Washington's success has been a great offensive play, not necessarily great defensive play. Now, the Caps do have a good penalty kill, and that's what worries me the most is that, what Toronto gets 3 power plays, goes over 3. I think that's very plausible here tonight. If they do have that line of Marner, Nyes, and Domi together, I do have interest in going back to Nylander, Tavares, and then whatever else. But I'm going to be honest, at $600 more for 1/5 the ownership, I would just rather go play Washington. So I think that's where I am in this game. I'm Washington top 2 lines, Washington one in particular, Washington power play, I think is just fine. I'm not going to say don't go play Toronto. Considering those ownership levels, though, I know we say don't consider ownership, but they have more ownership than the team with the higher total. Like, that just doesn't really jive for me. I think I'm on the Washington side here. This is a Washington game for me. We're going to move it along. This will probably be a little bit under an hour because, I don't have somebody to banter back and forth with here, but we are going to move on to Carolina and Utah. Carolina is going into Utah. Carolina has a 3.6 total. Utah has a 2.8 total. What I will say about Carolina and Utah as I take a sip of water here is that this morning when I was going through the games, Carolina was at 3.4, Carolina and Utah is at 2.6. So both team totals have gone up by 0.2 through the day as the over has been getting hammered. Like, this is trending towards a 6.5 total. So they're definitely expecting a lot of goals here. That's a good sign. And it's particularly a good sign because this is not a game that looks like it's going to have a ton of ownership. I'm going to start on the Carolina side here. Carolina, same top 2 that they've been running for most of the season. Aho, Svechnikov, Roslovic, Necas, Kotkaniemi, and Robinson. I haven't seen anything from a Carolina morning skate. I did see something that Marty Necas got hit in the mouth with a puck at morning skate, but they said he finished morning skate. Looks like he's good to go, so wouldn't worry about that. This is a good power play spot. This is a very good power play spot for Carolina. What worries me is that they are still without Seth Jarvis. I haven't seen an official update on Jarvis so far yet today. I'm assuming he's still out tonight. In the first game without him, they had both Blake and Drury rotating on the power play. Like, those guys are just not Seth Jarvis. They don't really have a fourth forward unless they decide to use Jack. Like, I think Jack Roslovic is probably the closest they can get to replacing Jarvis. And even then, I think it's still a little ways away. Regardless, that Carolina top line of Aho, Svechnikov, and Roslovic is up to 90 minutes together, 4.1 expected goals for, 4 actual goals for per 60. And that's with Aho still shooting 7.5% overall this season. Like, he's less than half. He shoots 16% like clockwork, and he's still at 7.5% this season. Like, it's scary to think that this line might actually have more goals to give. Like, I know Roslovic is going to regress a little bit, but they might actually have more goals to give, like, once Aho's goal rate picks up. And again, it is a really good power play spot. Utah takes a lot of penalties at 3.5 times shorthanded per game. That's the 7th most in the league. Again, the league average is at about 3.1. Carolina is above average by drawing power play opportunities. Obviously, the Carolina power play has been very good this season. You get Aho and Svechnikov both on the top power play unit. That line is under 19K on DraftKings here tonight. So a very reasonable price. Now, ice time could be a little bit of a concern. Aho has been closer to like the 19-minute range. Svechnikov like 17-ish, 17 to 18. Roslovic down around 14. It's not a lot of ice time for 18,800, but considering how good the power play matchup is, I think that's perfectly fine here. So I do like going back to Carolina 1. I think Carolina 2 is very much in play. Natchez, Kotkaniemi, and Robinson, 3.2 expected goals per 60. The problem I have with going back to Carolina 2, it just feels like eventually they're going to run out of gas. Like we talked we'll talk about Vegas later in the slate. We talk about how Vegas's top line was going to take a dive by shooting percentage eventually because they're shooting like 23%. And that's basically what's happened over the last couple of weeks, even before Mark Stone got injured. Like that Carolina second line is shooting over 20%. Half that rate would be pretty high for this line. So I do worry that they're going to go through a shooting percentage crash in that right now we're basically chasing points. I still think they're fine because they are generating well. But I prefer Carolina 1 just because you do get two guys on the top power play unit. They have been rotating, like I said, they have been rotating Jarvis's spot on the power play. So maybe Roslovic gets some run. That's just a guess. Maybe it doesn't happen. But at the very least, you get 2 out of the 3. And it is a good power play spot here for Carolina tonight. So Carolina 1 is the line that I would prefer to go to. I'm not super interested in the depth here. Like if you want to go to like a Martinook, Carrier, 2-man or something like that, I think you can. But I think if I'm playing Carolina, I really want the power play guys in my lineup here tonight. So Aho, Svechnikov, for certain. If you want to take off Roslovic, put in Natchez, it gets a lot more expensive. I think it's doable, but Carolina 1 for sure. On the Utah side, like they have been changing their lines a fair bit right now. They have Nick Bukestad on the top line with Nick Schmaltz and Clayton Keller. Jeez. Logan Cooley centering Dylan Genther and Logan Cooley, almost said Dogan Genther. Barrett Hayton down on the third line with Lawson Krause and Alex Kerfoot. Alex Kerfoot also on the top power play unit in Hayton's spot. So you have Keller and Schmaltz on the top line on the top power play, Genther on the second line on the top power play, and Kerfoot on the third line on the top power play. Here's what I'll say is that this isn't a good power play matchup for Utah, despite Carolina taking a ton of penalties. Like Carolina is the second most penalized team in the league so far this season. The problem is that they also have one of the best penalty kills in the league so far this season. But they do take so many penalties that they have given up 9 power play goals against in 14 games. It's nothing extreme. Like it's about the middle of the league for power play goals against per game. But they can be had because, they will take 4, maybe 5 penalties. I don't think that happens tonight because Utah typically doesn't draw a ton of power plays. But Carolina can get themselves in trouble with a parade to the penalty box. Here's the thing is I don't think that top line is going to be very good with Nick Bukestad there. Like I do like Bukestad as a player. I just don't think he's a top line center for Clayton Keller. Like that's just, I think a third line center is kind of where he's more suited. It's not just because I'm a Barrett Hayton fan, which I am. I just don't think that Nick Bukestad necessarily has the puck skills necessary to play with a Keller and Schmaltz 2-man. Now you don't all have to play the same way. You do need guys to dig the puck and all that. I just don't think he has the high end skill to play with them. That's kind of the issue. I like the look of that Genther, Cooley, Michelli line. Cooley and Michelli so far this season, 4 goals per 60 in their time together. Not a lot of time. I think they've only had 32 minutes together. So, just a couple goals in their ice time. But, shooting 12%, which is very reasonable. They're getting ice time. They'll get 16 to 18 minutes. Dylan Genther's ice time has certainly been on the rise over the last few weeks compared to earlier in the season. Cooley or Michelli, might be the team's best playmaker. Certainly might be the team's best passer. Logan Cooley and Dylan Genther are both great in transition through the neutral zone. It is a tough matchup against Carolina, but there's not much ownership coming in on them. 2.5% top 2 stack, 3.6% ownership. They're priced basically as a filler. You still get Dylan Genther on the top power play unit. I like Genther, Cooley, and Michelli here. If you want to just use like Genther and Cooley or Genther and Michelli or something like that, I think that's fine. but it is Utah too that I prefer on the Utah side. It's basically the only thing I really like on the Utah side. I'm going to be honest. I think this is a Carolina game for me. I really do like this power play matchup for the Hurricanes. So that's kind of where I'm leaning tonight for my single entry. All right, let's get to our next game. We have Vegas going into Anaheim. Vegas is up to a 3.8 team total. Anaheim still sitting at 2.7. So it's a 6.5 total, but obviously Vegas is the heavy favorite in this game. I see Brett asking about Mark Stone. I haven't seen anything further about Mark Stone yet. I've been looking all day. I'll just go check again right now. I still haven't, still no updates on Mark Stone. I'm going to assume he's not playing tonight. Again, I always say if you're a Stochastic member, be sure to check the Discord before lock to see if anybody has an update on Mark Stone. I'm going to assume he's out. It'll be interesting to see what Vegas does with their lines here tonight, because they did move Alex Holtz up to the top line in the last game. They went with Holtz, Barbashev, and Eichel for, I think, the second half of the game. Whether that sticks or not, I'm not sure. That's kind of tough to say what Vegas is going to do with their lines right now, just because of Stone missing. It is such a big hole out of their lineup. There hasn't been a morning skate yet today. Again, if you're a Stochastic member, just check the Discord to see where the lineups are going to come in, because Nicholas Roy was on the top power play unit last game. In theory, him and Eichel and Barbashev, it would give you 2 out of the 3 guys on the top power play unit. But if Roy moves down back to the third line and Holtz is up on the top line, then all of a sudden Eichel is the only guy on his line also on the top power play. So it would really dilute that power play correlation. There is a lot of ownership expected on Vegas here tonight. 18% top 2 stack for that line with Roy on the top, or for the top line with Roy there. 21.8% ownership. There are a lot of people expected to use Vegas, whether it's Vegas 1, Vegas 2, even Vegas 3 is getting ownership. Here's the thing. Vegas has really been riding shooting percentages. I mentioned earlier how with Stone on the top line, that top line was shooting over 20%. They have been riding pretty high shooting percentage. The second line duo of Hertl and Dorofeyev, what should be noted is that they've done a lot of their damage on the power play, not necessarily on the penalty kill. And now Hertl and Dorofeyev are both still on the power play. That's important here for this matchup. But Hertl and Dorofeyev so far this season are at 2.7 goals per 60, which is a little bit above league average. And it's also shooting 9.1% at 5-on-5, which is also a little bit above league average. So they're basically bang on where they should be at 5-on-5. They're getting 15 to 18 minutes. They're fairly reasonably priced. I honestly would just go to Hertl, Dorofeyev, and Howden. I have the most confidence that Hertl and Dorofeyev stay together as a duo. They both skate together on the top power play unit. Anaheim, not taking a ton of penalties, but their penalty kill is not very good. I do worry about Vegas's power play without Mark Stone. I was looking at the Vegas power play numbers over the years whenever he's been injured, and their shot rate goes down about 15%. Goals go down even more than that. That's not ideal, especially where Anaheim's not taking a ton of penalties. They're at 2.7 times shorthanded per game. That's well below league average, and it's about 25th in the league by power play opportunities given per game. That's not ideal, and it's not like Vegas draws a ton of power plays either. I think if you want to use Vegas here tonight, this isn't the spot where I would power play stack. This is a spot where I would even strength stack one of the even strength lines. I would probably avoid Eichel, Barbashev, and Roy. Just because they're coming in with over 20% ownership. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know if that line is going to be that much better than Hertl, Dorofeyev, and Howden. So Hertl, Dorofeyev, and Howden is where I would go on the Vegas side. I do have interest in them at 14,300, coming in under 10% ownership. Once you get into the middle parts of that Anaheim lineup, there are some good defensive matchups that can be had. But I'm going to be honest, just in general, I don't know if I have a lot of interest in Vegas here tonight. Like I said, I worry about the power play without Stone. The top line was due for huge regression anyway. Anaheim not taking a ton of penalties so far this season. And Anaheim's going to be without Cam Fowler. Cam Fowler got injured. Cam Fowler's been arguably their worst defensive defenseman so far this season. Like, remember the other night we talked about how Dallas could be better offensively with Dumba healthy scratched. I think Anaheim could be better defensively with Cam Fowler injured. And like, you don't root for injuries. You wish it was just a healthy scratch or something like that. But I think it could be one of those addition by subtraction things, especially where you're looking at, including power play stacks, like 4 out of every 10 lineup tonight is probably going to have some sort of Vegas stack in the lineup. I mean, Pittsburgh has a 3.5 total as well. Washington is up to 3.2. Carolina has a big total. Nobody's playing them. Like, I think there are just other spots I would rather go. I'm not going to say don't play Vegas. They do have the biggest total on the board. So or the second biggest total, I think, now behind Carolina. But, I'm not going to say don't play them. But I think considering that their lines, their top 6 is going to come in 20, anywhere between 10 and 25% owned every single player. And considering Carolina is going to be half that, if not less, I would just rather go play Carolina. So Vegas too, if anything, but again, not a ton of interest. I do have a little bit of interest in the Anaheim side. Like, let's be honest here. Vegas has not been a great defensive team so far this season. On the year, Vegas's penalty kill in particular has been struggling. Now, what's lucky for Vegas is they don't take a lot of penalties. They're the least penalized team in the league. So that's the one thing that's saving them on the PK. But their goals against rate while they're shorthanded is in the bottom half of the league. Their shot against rate while shorthanded is again in the bottom half of the league. Like, their penalty kill has been pretty similar to the Montreal Canadiens. Now, just imagine if, we're looking at Anaheim going up against the Montreal Canadiens. Now, obviously, Montreal takes a lot more penalties. That has been the difference. But that Terry Vetrano-Zegras line for Anaheim is perfectly correlated. The power play has been fine since they moved Zegras. Like, they had Zegras on the second unit for the first couple of weeks, which I honestly just could not understand for the life of me. Since they moved them to the top unit, it's been about a league average power play, maybe a little bit worse. But they're perfectly correlated at 13,600. Now, there is a lot of ownership, 14.2%. I think rightly so, because they are the best line and they are perfectly correlated. But if you're looking for a perfectly correlated filler stack, I think that Anaheim line is the one that I would go to. If you want to drop down to Anaheim too, I think that's fine. Killorn and Carlson have some history of success together. I do worry that those lines are going to get broken up. They do seem to like at least Terry and Vetrano playing together. So I think it's just Anaheim one that I really have a lot of interest in this game. Again, on the Vegas side, I would probably play Vegas too. But I think considering ownership levels and prices and all that, I would just probably rather go play Carolina for a team with a similar goal total. That's just kind of the way that I look at it. All right. Getting to our final game here, we have Los Angeles going into Colorado. Los Angeles is up to a 3.0 total. They started the day at 2.9. Colorado is up to a 3.4 total. So this game has moved from a 3 total to a 3.5. So again, goals expected here. News on the Los Angeles side, it looks like Trevor Moore, he got moved to the top line with Kempe and Kopitar in their last game. It looks like Kempe and Kopitar are going to have Moore again on the top line with them. That's kind of important because it's been a few games now where Los Angeles has been using Trevor Lewis, Akil Thomas. I think Andre Lee spent some time there. Like, they've been trying all their fourth liners basically to see if anybody would work with Kopitar and Kempe. And they're just like, screw it. We're going to put Trevor Moore there, which I think, does make sense. Obviously there is a price difference to deal with. Trevor Moore is 4,200, and all those other options like Thomas, Lewis, Lee, anywhere from 2,000 to 1,500 to 2,000 cheaper. So there is a price difference to worry about there, but they do get Trevor Moore on the top line. It does look like Laferriere, Byfield, and Fogle are going to stay together, and that Akil Thomas is going to join Kevin Fiala and Philip Deneau. I will say Fiala, Deneau, Akil Thomas, just no interest in that. That feels like a line that's going to get broken up fairly quickly. So I'm out on Los Angeles too. For me, it's between the top line and that Byfield line. Now, what worries me about that Kopitar, Kempe, Trevor Moore line is that Kempe's shot rate has gone down. We talked about that on the last show. Kopitar's shot rate is basically non-existent. Trevor Moore is the only guy, and Trevor Moore has been shooting a little bit less than last season as well. It is a bit of a concern that they're not shooting as much. What can alleviate some of that concern is that the top line is only 17K. And they'll probably see a fair bit of the Colorado top line. And honestly, the Colorado top line is probably their worst defensive line because, they do trade chances, not nearly as bad as like Pittsburgh or something like that, but they do like to trade chances. Now they come up on the better side of those chances more often than not because they have so much skill. But they will give up, 2-on-1s and 3-on-2s going back the other way if somebody fumbles a puck, misses a pass, those types of things. I don't mind that Kings top line here. I'm going to be honest. I would probably go back to Laferriere, Byfield, and Fogle. That trio is at 3.5 expected goals. Is at 2.5 expected goals so far this season. Now they are a line that is shooting hot at 21%, but Byfield got moved up to the top power play unit. Fogle and Laferriere do a good job of getting to the net, and Byfield is a really good playmaker. So they won't keep shooting 21%, but I do think it's a line that over a full season could probably shoot like 10 to 11%. So this is definitely an above average. I think it's definitely an above average 5-on-5 line. Laferriere, Byfield, and Fogle, I think, is definitely in play as a filler. Kopitar, Kempe, and Moore really does interest me because they are at 17K. They're kind of in that price range where if you want to avoid a super chalky Vegas, super chalky Detroit, super chalky Pittsburgh, I think that Los Angeles top line is definitely one that you can consider here. It is the Colorado side that we should have interest in. Now, obviously, it's basically Colorado one or bust. That Colorado top line, 44% top two stacks, 16.9% ownership. They are 24,500. But, I went through Detroit. We went through Carolina. There are cheap lines in Anaheim. Like, I do think there are a lot of low-cost options that you can use with Colorado here tonight. Since Arturi Lehkonen came back, they've averaged each of them. All of McKinnon, Rantanen, and Lehkonen have averaged over 24 minutes a game. That's simply preposterous usage. Now, Los Angeles is arguably the best 5-on-5 defensive team in the league. The problem is Los Angeles also does take a ton of penalties. They're giving up the 5th most power plays per game in the league this season. They've given up 13 power play goals against in 17 games. We know how good the Colorado power play can be, especially now that they have Lehkonen back. They have their 4 forwards with Cale Makar on the blue line. I think Colorado can really do some damage on the power play here tonight. Like, big surprise. Like, I like Colorado one a lot here tonight. It's just whether you want to pay up to 24,500. I think considering, a good spot for Washington, a decent spot for the Carolina power play. I do think there are other spots that you can go to without necessarily having to stuff in Colorado. But, even Casey Middlestat has been getting like 18 minutes a game. And, Casey Middlestat, still not super expensive. He's under 6K on DraftKings. So I do like Colorado one. It is a tough 5-on-5 matchup. It's a good power play matchup for them. You would only play the power play guys anyway. It just depends if you want to pay up for them. I think personally there are other spots that I would go to, but again, this is definitely a spot where, they could get 5 power plays or something like that. If you give Colorado 5 power plays, they can really do some damage. So Colorado 1's the line that I like best in this game, but they're also, nearly half their salary on DraftKings. So I'm not going to say whether to play them or not play them. I will say, obviously, I'm considering them because there are some cheap spots that I like here tonight, but I also like Washington, and I also like the top line from Carolina. I haven't made my lineup yet, so we'll see where things go. But 5-on-5, again, tough matchup, but a pretty good matchup on the power play. So, especially, particularly because they're just going to get so many chances. So, Colorado's definitely in play. I'm leaning towards not playing them, but you guys just kind of do what you think is best for yourselves. All right, those are the 5 games. Let's talk about some defensemen. There's not a lot at the top of the board here tonight. Cale Makar is leading projections, obviously. 12.58 for 8,500. It's not very good value. The best value is probably Shea Theodore, but again, I worry about the power play without Mark Stone, and he's not a guy that puts up huge peripherals. Like you need him to get like a goal and an assist or something like that to pay off. Like he can definitely do it because Shea Theodore is a defenseman that gets involved in a lot of goals. Like 55-60% of the goals scored on the ice, he'll get involved with. Like there are very few defensemen that can do that. It's just that he absolutely needs to get a goal and an assist or 3 assists or something like that to pay off here tonight because him getting the shot or a block bonus isn't super likely. In the mid-price range, I think Shane Gostisbehere is fine. Again, I think it's a good power play matchup for Carolina. That'd be the case that I would use him. Noah Hannafin for Vegas, like if you don't want to use Theodore, I think just going down, paying $4,700 for Hannafin is just fine. The 2 that stand out to me in that mid-ish price range are Brandt Clark and Moritz Seider. Obviously, Seider in a good spot to rack up peripherals against Pittsburgh, and good spot to just rack up goals and assists as well. And Brandt Clark, he has been having a really good season by peripheral numbers. That's kind of the thing that's sticking out. Like this isn't a guy like Theodore who relies on point production for his DFS value. Like Brandt Clark is over 2 shots and over 2 blocks per game so far this season. He has a block bonus in 4 out of his last 5 games. He has 11 shots on goal in his last 5 games. Like this is a guy that can put up, 13, 14 DraftKings points and not even get on the score sheet. So, I do like Clark here. I think Moritz Seider is my favorite in that mid-price range, but, Shea Theodore and Shane Gostisbehere certainly in play as well. If you're looking to pay down, Jalen Chatfield is projecting very well for a cheap price here tonight. He's near the top of the list, 6.39 DK points at 2,800. He's been getting like 18, 19 minutes fairly consistently. That's important because last season, like it was a lot lower than that. It was like, there were games he was getting 13, 14 minutes. He's probably around 15, 16 minutes. So the fact that he's getting more ice time and is in a fine matchup against Utah on the road, I think Chatfield for cheap, Jordan Spence projects well. Sam Malinsky from Colorado, like it's not a great matchup against the Kings, but he is also very projecting well for very cheap. So if you need a guy that's near min price, I think Sam Malinsky is fine. If you're paying up a little bit, like Olin Zellweger sticks out to me. He is running the power play for Anaheim. He's projecting reasonably well, 6.67 DK points for 3,900. Again, the Vegas penalty kill is not very good, and the Anaheim power play has been better since they added Trevor Zegras. So if you have 3,900, I don't mind Zellweger here. Matt Roy has been getting good ice time for Washington. I think he makes a lot of sense for 3,600. He's projecting very well, 2.1 points per $1,000 DK dollars expected here tonight. That's a really good projection. Jacob Slavin leads the way. Devin Taves had a good game in his last time out. He's been getting a lot of ice time. And I'll mention Vladislav Gavrikov. He gets ice time. He can block shots. He can even chip in on the score sheet. So Vladislav Gavrikov for cheap as well. In net, oh boy, in net is where things get interesting. Logan Thompson, 7,800, going for Washington here tonight, I think makes a lot of sense for me. Again, the Caps do give up their shots. I do think the Caps win this game. And as long as he doesn't give up, as long as it's not like a 6-5 game or something, I think he should be just fine. Cam Talbot is kind of interesting. Cam Talbot's projection here tonight isn't strong because Pittsburgh has such a high total, but he's only 7,500. He's basically in the middle of the board, 6th overall by projection, and we have definitely seen Pittsburgh have trouble scoring. So if Pittsburgh's power play doesn't really do anything against a bad Detroit penalty kill, I think Talbot can really rack up those points at 5-on-5. So I don't mind Cam Talbot either. And I'm just going to say it, like, Alexander Georgiev, like, I know how bad his start to the season was, but Georgiev is 4th by projections here tonight, 8K. He's down a little bit from the more expensive guys like I'm not sure Aiden Hill starts. I haven't seen any confirmation on that for Vegas here so far tonight. My guess is that Samsonov probably gets a turn. It is what it is. I'm definitely not starting Nedeljkovic. Like, the problem I have with the Pittsburgh goalie is that Detroit doesn't generate a lot of shot volume. They thrive on the power play. So yes, like, maybe Nedeljkovic only gives up like 1 goal on 20 shots, but if Detroit's power play keeps rolling, you give up like 4 goals on 20 shots. That's kind of my issue here, is that I don't think he sees a ton of volume. I would prefer Cam Talbot. I do think Georgiev is certainly in play if you have room to pay up. Logan Thompson, he's at the top of the board, and he's at the top of my board as well. So I think Logan Thompson probably my favorite play in net tonight. Hat trick pick. I just slandered the Pittsburgh Penguins a little bit. I'm going to go back to the Pittsburgh Penguins. I'm going to say they kind of right the ship a little bit here tonight, and I'm going to go with Brian Rust as my hat trick pick. All right. Those are the 5 games. Thank you very much for coming to hang out. We will be back tomorrow. Josh will be back tomorrow. It won't be a solo show. He saves his solo shows for OnlyFans. We are going to be back tomorrow at the usual time at 2:00 Eastern, and then we are back on Friday and Saturday as well. Thank you guys very much for coming to show up. Again, if you want to join Stokastic, we have an affiliate link that you can click. I'll drop it in the chat right now. Just click that link, use the promo code Stokastic15. You get 15% off your first week or month here at Stokastic. Thank you guys very much for the support. Josh will be back tomorrow. I will be back tomorrow. Hopefully we can win some money tonight, and we'll see you then.